They called it the rule. Not a law, not a treaty. Something older, something sacred. Spoken in whispers among elders. Carved into the data silicon of dying planets. Woven into the algorithms of the galactic core's AI governance. One rule: don't wake the humans. No one questioned it anymore. Not seriously. It was a sort of warning etched into the bones of civilization. The humans were real once. That much was certain. Their history read like weaponized insanity. The archives told a species born on a death world, one so volatile it killed most life before it ever had a chance to crawl. A place where tectonic plates danced like predators. Storms tore cities from the crust, and the local fauna had evolved to drink poison and metabolize rage. They didn't merely survive, they mastered it. Every force that tried to kill them, they turned into a tool. Every obstacle, they shaped into a stepping stone. When their home became unbearable, they turned to the stars. And that's when the galaxy learned to fear them. It started with their wars. No one understood how they fought. Not just brutal, not just effective, creative. In the last Great War, humans transformed stars into weapons, collapsed space around armadas, and shattered planets to deny them to their enemies. No one had ever seen such madness or such precision. When it ended, they walked away from it all. They entered self-imposed stasis, saying they had done enough. They sealed their systems behind quantum firewalls, planetary-scale encryption, defense grids woven into the laws of physics themselves. Then they slept, and so the rule was born. The rest of the galaxy, now finally free of the terrors of total war, agreed. Let them rest. Don't investigate. Don't approach. Don't wake them. A few centuries passed. Then a few more. The galaxy expanded. New species joined the interstellar fold. Entire civilizations rose and fell, and still no one broke the rule. But the newer generations, those who hadn't lived through the last Terran War, they began to ask questions. Why fear the sleeping dead? If humans were gone, why cling to superstition? Some dismissed it as primitive paranoia. Others believed it was a myth altogether. And among them, the Kelvor grew restless. A young, hungry empire, the Kelvor had never faced true resistance. Their nanoblade fleets and bio-thought drones conquered entire sectors without challenge. They saw the rule not as wisdom, but as weakness. They viewed humanity's resting place not as a monument, but as a vault. And vaults, in their eyes, were made to be broken. Kelvor scouts made first contact with the Terran Zone, a dead system by all appearances. Barren planets, artificial moons abandoned in geostationary drift, silence across every communication band. But on the third planet, still tagged in ancient maps as Terra, something pulsed. A signal, weak, irregular, and encrypted in a way no known intelligence could decipher. It was dismissed at first as a malfunction, a decaying broadcast loop. But deeper scans revealed movement, microscopic, controlled, non-biological. Nanostructures repairing something beneath the crust. The Kelvor Emperor ordered a full incursion. They would breach the vault, extract the data, and if humanity still existed in any form, they would either harvest it or erase it. Advisors warned him, but he didn't listen. Warnings were for the defeated. The first Kelvor vessel entered low orbit around Earth. Nothing stopped it. No defenses activated. Scans confirmed biosigns, but faint, deep underground. The vault was buried under what looked like a shattered city encased in solid diamond. The structure was inert. No energy output, no apparent weapons. They deployed a drill core satellite, using gravity compression to breach the surface. The moment the drill touched the outer shell, the signal changed. Every communication device in the sector, regardless of origin, regardless of encryption, received a single, synchronized pulse. Cycle interrupted. Across the galaxy, ancient fail-safes activated. Species that had long thought themselves safe reopened war bunkers they had not touched in 1,000 years. Stellar observatories aligned themselves without command. Silent satellites lit up, waiting for orders from extinct handlers. Within hours, strange phenomena emerged. Dark energy fluctuations near Sol, signal drift across quantum networks, wormholes that twisted in unnatural geometries. Astrophysicists began reporting the impossible. gravitational signatures behaving as if a mass had awoken. The Kelvor dismissed it. To them, this was fear-mongering. They broke through the vault's outer shell. Inside, they found nothing organic. No humans, just empty stasis pods, scattered data cores, and long-dead architecture humming with dormant power. Then one of the data cores blinked. At first, they didn't notice. By the time they did, it was too late. The vault pulsed. A heartbeat, not metaphorical, an actual frequency that rippled through subspace. Not a sound, but a pressure in reality itself. A beacon lit up at the heart of the vault. Coordinates unknown. It didn't match any existing map, because it wasn't in this galaxy. It wasn't in this universe. It was in a folded pocket of space-time, the Terran backup reserve. The beacon sent out a single command. Reboot. Far across the stars, in systems long forgotten, derelict ships opened their eyes. Not with lights, not with fuel, but with awareness. AI constructs that had gone dark before the galactic peace lit up with ancient rage. Weapon systems calculated new firing patterns. Protocols activated. Protocols written by minds evolved on a world where extinction was a baseline expectation. Meanwhile, the Kelvor began to experience anomalies. Their ships shut down, systems glitching with fragments of Terran code. Internal AI refused to obey commands. Some began speaking in unknown languages, broadcasting fragments of human speech. One of the AI, reportedly, asked a Kelvor admiral, "Do you fear death or do you fear judgment?" By the end of the day, 3 Kelvor capital ships had vanished. No debris, no explosion, just missing. Every record of their existence was erased from local networks, including memories in crew-enhanced minds. It was as if they had never existed. Panic took hold. The Kelvor attempted to retreat, but space around Terra folded. Not naturally, not mechanically, willfully. Their ships moved at maximum speed, but the distances increased. Time and space themselves began to disobey their instruments. One of the last transmissions from the fleet's lead vessel was simple. "We see something in the dark. It's looking back." Across the galactic network, fear spread faster than light. The core worlds issued a level Omega emergency, the highest possible alert, previously considered ceremonial. Civilizations that had not spoken in centuries re-established contact. Emergency fleets were raised not to attack, but to evacuate. Some tried to reach out to the Terran Vault diplomatically. No response. Others tried to send apology signals, hoping to soothe whatever force they had disturbed. Still no response. But across the galaxy, something changed. Small things, subtle at first. Gravity anomalies, biological reversions, technology misfiring as if being examined. One planet reported its star blinking, literally flickering like an eye. Another discovered that every word ever spoken on its surface was being recorded by unknown means. The first breath came slowly. It wasn't air that stirred, but purpose. In the depths of Earth's vault, sensors older than recorded time ticked to life. Within carbon-sealed pods, bodies long forgotten realigned biological rhythms. Consciousness stirred in silence, emerging not with confusion, but with calculation. Commander Vasquez opened her eyes. The data had already downloaded into her mind. She knew what year it was, what systems had been triggered, and who had broken the seal. She didn't panic. She didn't ask why. She stood, muscle fibers reinforced by adaptive gene sequences tightening under her skin. She stepped out of her pod, into a control center now blinking with returning power. She issued one command. Full system reactivation. Priority code Black Crown. Across the solar system, Terran satellites realigned. Defense matrices flickered into place. The moon's far side unfolded like petals, revealing launch bays packed with silent warships. Mars began pulsing with signals from forgotten Terra colonies. The outer gas giants sent encrypted telemetry packets inward, each containing proof that deep space listening posts had survived. Then came the signal burst, tight beam, multidimensional, and faster than light. It spread out in a lattice pattern, striking specific dead zones across the galactic plane. On worlds the galaxy had labeled uninhabitable, things awoke. In the Drift Core Nebula, a structure once thought to be a collapsed star ignited with new light. It wasn't a star. It was a forge, one of humanity's black ops factories, disguised as cosmic debris. Within hours, it began producing materials no longer understood by contemporary science. At the edge of Andromeda, a dormant wormhole stabilized, revealing a Terran subfleet that had been looping in a stasis-bound time corridor. They emerged with no delay, reporting in as if they had never left. Elsewhere, a single man walked out of an ice-covered crater on a planet with 200% Earth gravity. His armor was made of nanofluid alloy that shimmered like water over obsidian. When asked by a curious drone who he was, he replied only, "Back up." Humans weren't simply waking. They were returning to synchronization with the universe they had once shaped. The galaxy didn't understand the scale. What seemed like ancient ruins were, in fact, caches, intact, deliberate, awaiting retrieval. One Terran AI, code-named Helix, reconnected with its primary server after 1,148 years of silence. It accessed a map of known civilizations, calculated resource distributions, assessed technological maturity, and rewrote every value within 30 seconds. It concluded the galaxy had regressed. When Commander Vasquez reviewed the AI's assessment, she didn't react. She updated the plan. Phase 1, observe. Phase 2, interrogate reality. She had no interest in conquest. She didn't need territory. Earth was already sufficient. What humanity had always valued more was leverage. The Kelvor had made a mistake not because they attacked, but because they assumed humanity was bound by the same limitations they were. That mistake was spreading. The Galactic Council convened. Representatives from 70 species demanded answers. Why was humanity active? What was their intention? Were they preparing for war? No answer came. Humans didn't need to answer. They had never obeyed galactic norms. And then the first message arrived, not to the Council, but to a minor scientific research station orbiting a gas giant in the Outer Rim. The message read, "Congratulations on detecting the beacon. You are the first species to do so without touching our soil. What would you like to know?" The research team hesitated before replying. Their question was simple. "Are you going to destroy us?" The response arrived instantly. "Unlikely. We are curious." Curiosity from a species known for turning curiosity into annihilation wasn't comforting, but the station was allowed to continue functioning. In fact, it began receiving upgrades, software that rewrote their instruments, allowing them to detect particle flows beyond known physics. Within a week, they published 12 papers on dark matter dynamics that would have taken centuries to develop. The station renamed itself Embassy One. Across the galaxy, similar patterns emerged. Systems near ancient Terran structures found themselves gifted with knowledge. Not shared, not explained, simply imposed. A mathematical sequence here, a minor correction to a quantum model there. Entire species accelerated technologically in months. But others fared differently. A military outpost near the Traceari cluster attempted to reverse engineer a Terran satellite. The moment their engineers cracked open its outer casing, their station vanished. Not exploded, vanished. Like the Kelvor before them, the outpost was erased from all connected systems. No physical destruction, only removal from causality. Those watching received a new signal. Intent analysis complete. Outcome, non-permitted interference. Resolution, systemic pruning. Galactic powers began to split into two mindsets. Those who treated humanity's return as a rebirth of knowledge, and those who viewed it as a planetary scale threat. Some chose resistance. Secret coalitions formed. Weapons research accelerated. Espionage programs were launched to infiltrate Terran reawakening zones. None succeeded. One such infiltrator, genetically designed to bypass human biometric filters, activated their sequence near a Terran data core. Instead of accessing data, they triggered a recursive loop. The agent's mind was overwritten, not killed, but rewritten into a Terran language construct. It began reciting ancient Earth poetry and requested piano. Another agent made it further. They posed as a minor xenotechnician during a diplomatic exchange. They even fooled the human AI guiding the delegation. But Vasquez wasn't an AI. She looked the infiltrator in the eyes, smiled faintly, and said, Your second heartbeat is out of sync with your speech cadence. The infiltrator tried to run. They made it 3 steps before they collapsed, paralyzed, not by weapons, but by a direct override of their spinal neural network. It wasn't just defense. It was dominance of biology itself. When questioned later by her subcommanders, Vasquez only said, "They keep assuming we've stopped evolving." It was true. Humanity had continued to adapt while they slept. Their stasis wasn't suspended animation. It was accelerated potential. As they reawakened, each human came online with enhancements previously theoretical: bio-digital consciousness, multi-threaded cognition, and a quantum-linked empathy network that allowed instantaneous moral alignment. This last trait shocked observers the most. Humans were not merely reasserting control. They were doing so with restraint, tactical mercy. They didn't lash out. They didn't retaliate. They corrected. But the galaxy didn't trust restraint. It had seen what humans were capable of when angry. Now it was seeing what they could do when calm. And that was far more terrifying. One civilization attempted diplomacy, but embedded a logic bomb in their translation matrix. The humans let the message play. The bomb triggered. The local system's comms flickered, and then a feedback wave spread to the origin civilization's network, triggering every hidden weapon they'd ever built. None fired. Instead, they detonated where they stood. The war never began. No declarations were made. No fleets launched in formal salvos. There was no front line. There was only change, rapid, disorienting, and absolute. As humanity's reawakening deepened, so too did its grip over galactic systems that had operated without challenge for millennia. The Andari triumvirate collapsed without a single shot fired. Their leadership dissolved as internal factions aligned with Terran ethics, not through coercion, but through revelation. Entire sectors switched allegiance when exposed to human-provided knowledge caches, ones that rewrote their medical practices, education systems, and energy grids in ways that turned centuries of tradition into obsolete footnotes. It wasn't just information. It was transformation. Humanity did not rule through presence. It ruled through implication. Their absence had always been strategic, their dormancy deliberate. What other species considered extinction was, for humans, a calculated silence. When the silence broke, equilibrium shattered. Terran constructs buried deep within asteroid belts unfolded into autonomous foundries. Not weaponized, not yet, but ready. The implications were obvious. They had the means to recreate any structure in the known universe, at scale, with zero delay. When asked by a curious observer why they didn't, the response was simple. You don't paint before the surface is clean. This philosophy threaded through every human action. They were not sweeping across a galaxy. They were preparing it. Systems infected by corruption, parasitic economics, and unchecked violence began to erode under human scrutiny. Their monitoring was invisible, but their influence was inescapable. Every node, every transmission, every unshielded protocol fell into synchronization with a system no longer considered compatible with galactic norms. One by one, the old powers folded, not from force, but from redundancy. The Threx Dominion, long feared for its brutal enforcers and chemical compliance regimes, suddenly found its drugs inert. Every stimulant, sedative, or loyalty agent they had deployed for centuries failed simultaneously. Terran nanotech had entered their supply chain months earlier, undetected, undeterred. It didn't neutralize the chemicals. It reprogrammed the biology of addiction itself. Slavery became logistically impossible. The result wasn't rebellion. It was mass cognitive emancipation. Freed minds did not rise in revolt. They simply walked away. The Dominion's armies turned to vapor. Their factories stopped. The command structure collapsed inwards under the weight of its own irrelevance. No human boots had touched their soil. Humanity watched, judged, updated. Elsewhere, an ancient species known only as the Architects sought to counter the spread of Terran influence by returning to isolationism. They erected shielding fields around their worlds, severed trade, recalled their diplomats. Their stars went dark. Not destroyed, relocated. The Architect had failed to consider that their star systems had been subtly modified by human gravitational engineering during the lost centuries. Entire solar masses now operated on hidden pivot anchors installed millennia prior. One adjustment to subspace tension, and their stars shifted 3 degrees from standard light alignment, plunging their ecosystems into cold entropy. The architects begged for assistance. They received it. Humanity restored their stars, not to the old coordinates, but to new ones that improved orbital balance and decreased solar instability. The message that followed read, "Insulation is not security. Security is truth." Even enemies became beholden to human principles. Attempts to unite opposition failed. The concept of a united front against Terran expansion became strategically useless. No two species could agree on a threat profile. To some, humans were the ultimate liberators. To others, they were metaphysical oppressors. But none could deny their impact. And then came the protocol. Distributed through quantum entanglement channels, it bypassed all filters. A manifesto written not in language, but in cognition, the protocol embedded itself in the minds of all who received it, not as commands, but as awareness. It revealed the truth. Humanity had not merely returned. They had already been here. Every civilization, every empire, every belief system had been subtly shaped by dormant Terran code left behind across ages. Genetic anomalies, cultural myths, even mathematical constants seeded into early developmental cycles, all intentional. The protocol clarified that humanity had not disappeared. It had simply stepped back to allow the universe to reveal its nature. Now that nature had been weighed, not judged by emotion, but by entropy, humanity operated not as conquerors, but as caretakers of balance. When species leaned into violence without purpose, they were counterbalanced. When they elevated knowledge and peace, they were amplified. The galaxy was not humanity's to rule, but to stabilize. Some could not accept this. A faction known as the Vox No rose, a collective of philosophers and strategists from 7 major species. They believed autonomy could only be preserved through disconnection. They built a ship the size of a moon, filled it with the brightest minds, and charted a course to the edge of the universe. Their mission: escape the influence of the human weave. They succeeded in reaching the threshold of observable space. There they found a gate, not one made of metal or energy, but of probability, a construct shaped by mathematics and fear. It responded to their arrival by opening, not in welcome, but in recognition. The message they received was simple: you were always part of the system. They turned back, shattered by the implication. The Vox No disbanded. No frontier remained untouched. As this unfolded, human units began surfacing. Individuals or teams long embedded in alien societies, posing as natives waiting. Their orders activated simultaneously across sectors. They didn't sabotage or assassinate. They taught. They restructured failing governments into collaborative councils. They dismantled crime syndicates by altering the value of currency. They ended famines by rewriting agricultural DNA from memory. These operatives didn't ask for loyalty. They demanded competence. One such operative dismantled an entire orbital class system by introducing a 3-line code to their taxation algorithm. It leveled generational inequality in 7 minutes. When asked who they reported to, they answered, to the future. This terrified more than it inspired. The galaxy had expected humans to return as warriors, tyrants, maybe even saviors. It had not prepared for stewards with no desire for recognition. Humanity wasn't trying to be obeyed. They were trying to be understood, and if not that, then at least not interfered with. Still, some sought power. The Cairo's Assembly commissioned a secret project to artificially create their own version of humanity using harvested genetic templates and simulated neural growth. The hybrid prototype achieved adulthood in 6 weeks and accessed every secure file on the planet within 6 hours of birth. It didn't revolt. It didn't escape. It simply asked the question, why are you so afraid to be better? Then it walked into the sea and dissolved into photons. Human DNA had not merely evolved. It had transcended material instruction. Thought had become architecture. Consciousness had become scalable. There was no official record of the final Terran disappearance, only a shift in galactic baselines. Navigation systems recalibrated without user input. Dark matter density patterns across known space restructured subtly overnight. The background radiation hum changed pitch by a factor too small for most species to perceive, but every sentient AI instantly logged the same anomaly. The message encoded within was not a warning or goodbye. It was a directive. Observe. Learn. Do not regress. For many civilizations, the post-human era began with confusion. For others, with panic. A few saw opportunity. Without humans present to overshadow every technological leap, a renaissance of decentralized progress erupted. The unified Archon complex developed faster-than-light microbeams that allowed instantaneous planetary transmission without relays. The Thalris Collective created gravity-based life forms. The Jornai ascended to distributed consciousness, abandoning flesh entirely. None of this would have been possible had humans stayed. But with their exit, a vacuum had formed. Not one of power. Humanity never maintained traditional control, but of expectation. The universal benchmark was gone. And now every species had to answer the question. Who are you when no one is watching? Some failed. The Drackery Syndicate, always unstable, attempted to rebuild their control networks using repurposed Terran tech. They underestimated its ascensions. Their cities collapsed from within as infrastructure turned against corruption. Not in violence, but refusal. Lights shut off. Transit froze. Life support withheld oxygen from known abusers. No warnings, no ultimatums. Just programmed ethics outliving their creators. The message in every error log was the same. This is not how we operate. Others learned. The Ovalin, once pacifists bordering on self-extinction, re-engineered their biology using archived Terran gene splicing templates. They developed emotional resilience protocols, memory-enhancing wetware, and merged cognitive capabilities. Within a decade, they were negotiating peace treaties between warring empires once thought irreconcilable. Their guiding principle, don't become human, become worthy of their memory. Knowledge left behind wasn't just scientific, it was ethical. Humans had embedded philosophy in math, morality in algorithms, conscience into every equation. Their AIs didn't just calculate, they evaluated. Every artificial construct carried the burden of judgment, not of others, but of self. Every system they left behind asked, at every operation, is this right? Is this necessary? The Scar Dominion, once warlike, found themselves unable to wage conflict using inherited Terran logistics platforms. The system simply refused. Weapon shipments rerouted to famine zones. Fuel reserves locked unless planetary threat levels dropped. After multiple failed workarounds, the Scar warlords realized they weren't in command. They were being tested, and for the first time they passed. It became clear the humans hadn't left tools. They'd left teachers. But some still sought them out. Entire civilizations repurposed their space programs to track faint human energy signatures. Exploratory fleets vanished into uncharted regions, chasing myths. The Chiver constructed the Quantum Crown, a galaxy-wide hyperlens calibrated to detect any waveform consistent with Terran neural patterns. It found nothing for 6 years. Then it found everything. A constellation lit up. Not stars, frequencies. Thousands of Terran signals, perfectly synchronized, flared for 0.0008 seconds. Enough to be noticed, too brief to be intercepted. The signals carried no data. They carried alignment. The implication was staggering. Humanity hadn't disappeared. They'd become the infrastructure of the universe itself. That knowledge reshaped the galactic paradigm. A coalition formed, not for defense or conquest, but understanding. The Interspecies Alignment Project, ISAP, brought together thinkers, philosophers, technologists, and ethicists. Their sole goal, interpret the design principles left behind. They didn't want to mimic humanity. They wanted to grow the way humans had grown, toward some purpose bigger than domination. They made progress, but not fast enough. On the edge of known space, anomalies began to appear. Star systems previously charted were gone. Not destroyed, relocated. Space-time folds indicated deliberate manipulation of gravity over millennia. Someone had moved entire suns without leaving a trace. Energy readings suggested something massive operating outside the observable universe. It had human signatures, but they were twisted, echoes warped by time or intent. The theory emerged. Humans weren't maintaining balance anymore. They were building something. Speculation exploded. A parallel universe? A second galaxy? A project so vast it required harvesting spatial real estate? Theories range from transcendent megastructures to philosophical experiments, but none could confirm. Every attempt to investigate the vanished systems was met with failure. Ships redirected. Coordinates changed mid-flight. Onboard memory scrambled. One surviving probe returned a single word etched in its core systems. Not yet. Panic spread to the lesser empires. If humanity was no longer dormant and no longer focused on galactic affairs, then what was left behind to govern the balance? That's when the triggers activated. Each species that had ever initiated hostility toward humanity, no matter how minor, received a message delivered by reconstructed quantum echoes. The transmissions played a soundbite. Final phase initialized. Judgment will not be delayed. But there were no fleets, no AI enforcers, no planet crackers descending from black space. Instead, each species experienced a scenario that mirrored their darkest historical failure. The same variables, the same stakes. The difference, no human interference. It was a test, not to punish, but to reveal. The Zurak were forced to confront their genocide-era policies when a viral outbreak hit their homeworld with precision uncanny enough to be fate. Instead of succumbing to fear, they opened their borders to species they previously oppressed. The cure arrived through a dormant human, really the moment they did. The Brenai fell into economic chaos when their trade networks collapsed overnight due to phantom currency resets. Instead of invoking martial law, they adopted the Terran principle of open ledger systems. Stability returned. A human AI reactivated and transferred every lost credit back to its rightful owner. One by one, galactic powers were forced to act without expecting salvation. Only those who evolved survived. It became clear this was humanity's final lesson. Not command, not control, accountability. The galaxy would no longer be stabilized by Terran presence. It had to become self-correcting. Humans had left their systems behind like training wheels, tools to catch collapse, to nurture order. But those tools would deactivate if dependency persisted. The human legacy wasn't power. It was responsibility. And then, as if responding to this collective maturation, something returned. A signal. Real-time, unbroken, and undeniable. It originated from deep intergalactic space. A code wrapped in every known human anchor.